The previous video in this series discussed the glycemic index and how it helps identify the speed at which a particular food can impact blood glucose levels. This video takes it one step further by explaining the glycemic load, which takes into consideration how much carbohydrate is found within the food. To briefly recap, the glycemic index is a value that is assigned to a food based upon the speed at which the carbohydrate found within that food is able to affect blood glucose levels. The glycemic load combines this information with how much of that carbohydrate exists within the food. The result is a numerical index value that identifies the total impact that the food can have on blood sugar. The glycemic load considers the question, how much of that carbohydrate is available to impact blood sugar? If the amount is small, then the glycemic load value will be low. If there is a large amount of carbohydrate found within the food, then the load will be high. Consider watermelon. Watermelon has a glycemic index of 80, which is considered high. But watermelon also has a glycemic load value of 4, which is low. So how is this possible? Watermelon is mostly water and has very little carbohydrate within a typical serving. So while the carbohydrate that is in watermelon is quickly digested and absorbed, the amount that is digested and absorbed is quite small, so its impact will also be small. So in essence, the glycemic load is the combination of the complexity of the carbohydrate together with the quantity of that carbohydrate. The formula to solve for the glycemic load is the glycemic index value multiplied by the amount of carbohydrate in the food in grams. Take that and divide it by 100. Foods labeled with a glycemic load of 10 or less are considered low glycemic load foods. 11 to 19 are medium glycemic load foods, and 20 or higher are considered high glycemic load foods. For example, an 8-ounce cola beverage with a glycemic index of 63 has 25.4 grams of carbohydrates. To determine its glycemic load, multiply the GI or glycemic index by the amount of carbohydrates to get 1600. Then divide by 100 to get the glycemic load of 16. So an 8-ounce cola beverage will have a glycemic load of 16. But now, take that same cola beverage, but this time instead of an 8-ounce serving, turn it into a 12-ounce serving size. The glycemic index value stays at 63 because the types of carbohydrates do not change. But because the amount of carbohydrates change in the larger serving size, the glycemic load will be different. It will increase. We can calculate this value by using the glycemic index, once again of 63, but this time there are 38.1 grams of carbohydrates, resulting in a value or glycemic load of 24. This is now in the high glycemic load range as compared to 16 in the 8-ounce serving, which is considered a medium load value. Wrapping up glycemic load. The glycemic load helps us to understand the overall impact that a food may have on an individual's blood sugar level. The more of a particular food product consumed, the higher the glycemic load will be, as was shown with the cola example. Think for a minute the impact of a 44-ounce super big drink would have on a person's blood sugar and why there is reasonable concern regarding such large sized drinks. Even with that said, there will be times when an individual will want a high glycemic load for a food or beverage. Just one example would be an endurance athlete trying to replenish energy stores after an event. But more commonly, the glycemic index and the glycemic load will be used to try to help individuals manage blood sugars as well as their weight. One last thing to note, the glycemic index is a number assigned to a particular food. However, the glycemic load, since it takes into consideration the glycemic index and the amount of carbohydrate within that food, it is a calculated value, so this value can change or be applied to single foods but multiple servings, individual meals, or even a complete daily intake. RDStudy.com video tutorials are produced and owned by Nutrition News Network LLC. Any copying, reuse, or redistribution, in full or in part for any purpose without the written consent of Nutrition News Network LLC is prohibited. All rights reserved.